on December 26, 2004. In just a few hours, the ocean turned entire coastlines into graveyards. Homes vanished, streets disappeared. Families were torn apart in seconds. A force born beneath the Indian Ocean unleashed one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history. And the most terrifying part, many people never even understood what was happening until it was far too late. But this horror did not begin with screaming. It began with a morning that looked completely ordinary. Families woke up after Christmas, believing this would be a beautiful day. And then, the sea began to pull back. Not like a normal tide. It retreated too far, too fast, too strangely, exposing wet sand and parts of the seabed human eyes were never meant to see. And because they did not know what it meant, they stayed. They pointed. They stared. They called to one another, believing they were witnessing something strange and beautiful. At 7:53 a.m. local time, off the northwest coast of Sumatra, a magnitude 9.1 undersea earthquake tore through the seafloor. The ocean floor lifted, the water above it moved, and the tsunami was born. It did not arrive wearing the face of terror. It arrived wearing the face of calm. And somewhere that morning, a mother was still holding her child's hand, not knowing that her world was now being measured in minutes. In northern Sumatra, especially around Banda Aceh, death came almost immediately. The first waves arrived in as little as 15 to 20 minutes after the earthquake. Along parts of the Sumatran coast, the tsunami reached around 30 meters, and later, surveys recorded run-up levels of up to 51 meters in parts of Aceh. When that wall of water entered the land, it was no longer water. It became erasure. Homes vanished. Roads disappeared. Entire neighborhoods were swallowed by black water, mud, debris, and screams. Some coastal areas of Aceh were not merely damaged. They were wiped clean from the map of the living world. Places where people had slept, prayed, cooked, and raised children were reduced to mud, wreckage, and silence. But the horror did not stop in Indonesia. It kept going, as if the entire Indian Ocean had become a corridor of death. The waves spread outward, carrying destruction from one coastline to the next. Sri Lanka was hit. India was hit. Thailand was hit. The Maldives were hit. Even Somalia, more than 5,000 kilometers from the epicenter, was still struck by the force of the tsunami. This was not the tragedy of one nation. It was the tragedy of an entire ocean. A single rupture beneath the sea had become a chain of death across thousands of kilometers. The final toll most widely cited is 227,899 people dead or missing. Indonesia lost 167,540. Sri Lanka lost 35,322. India lost 16,269. Thailand lost 8,212. And when those numbers are read one after another, a terrible truth emerges. The sea did not kill only where it was born. It killed wherever it could reach. But even those numbers do not reach the deepest layer of grief, because more than 1/3 of the dead and missing were children. Children who had gone to the beach. Children who had been sleeping. Children who had been laughing only minutes before the sea arrived. This disaster became empty dinner tables, empty beds, silent schoolyards, and toys waiting for hands that would never return. It became photographs with faces no one could bring back. It became names spoken again and again, with no answer. Try to see this disaster not as a map, but as a series of human images. A child's sandal caught in the branches of a tree, a stuffed animal buried in mud, a family photograph soaked in salt water, a tiny shirt hanging from broken debris, a mother who survived, but could no longer find the child whose hand she had been holding, a father shouting the names of his family through the ruins, answered only by water moving through broken stone. That is why this disaster did not simply make humanity afraid. It made humanity weep. It broke not only buildings, roads, and ports, but the invisible structures of family, memory, and belonging. Many of those who died that day were travelers. They had come to the sea to rest, to take pictures, to begin a beautiful day. And the sea turned that holiday into the last day of their lives. In many places, people had more time than Banda Aceh, but they didn't have the knowledge to understand the signal the ocean was sending. There was no strong regional warning system to tell them this was not a strange phenomenon to watch. It was a command to run. Humanity learned to listen to the ocean only after it had already taken nearly 228,000 lives. That is one of the cruelest truths of this story. The lesson came, but it came buried beneath unimaginable loss. And after the waves came another ocean of suffering. Around 1.6 to 1.7 million people were displaced or left homeless. Families slept in temporary shelters. Elderly people sat before the empty space where their homes once stood. Children grew up with the memory of the mourning. The sea came burned into their lives forever. For many survivors, the tsunami did not end when the water withdrew. It continued in nightmares, in grief, in the permanent absence of the people they loved. 1.6 to 1.7 million. Millions forced to relearn the most basic parts of life. Where to find clean water, where to find medicine, where to sleep without terror, where to bury the dead, where to begin again when everything familiar is gone. The sea did not only take those standing on the shore, it took people who were eating, sleeping, praying, working, laughing, and holding their children. It took ordinary life in the middle of being lived. That is why 227,899 is not just a death toll. It is 227,899 stories cut short. 227,899 names that were never written any further. And behind every one of those names stands a wider circle of pain. A mother, a father, a son, a daughter, a husband, a wife, a friend, a neighbor. The wave did not only kill nearly 228,000 people, it struck the hearts of millions who survived. Perhaps that is why the most terrifying image of this disaster is not the moment the wall of water crashed into a city. Perhaps it is the moment before. The moment the sea pulled back, too quiet, too ordinary, too much like a miracle people wanted to walk toward. But in truth, it was the final doorway before hell. By the time the horizon darkened, by the time the roar arrived, by the time the ocean finally rose into view, many people turned to run. But for far too many, there was no longer enough time. And when the water withdrew again, it left behind another kind of silence. The silence of beaches covered in clothing, broken boats, children's toys, mud, wood, and memory. There are disasters that make humanity tremble because of their power. And there are disasters that make humanity cry because of its helplessness. The 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami was both. It began with a magnitude 9.1 earthquake, killed across 15 countries, left 227,899 people dead or missing, displaced up to 1.7 million, and took a world that would never fully heal. But if all of that horror had to be compressed into a single image, it might not be the wave itself. It might be a beach, a mourning, the sea pulling back farther than anything normal, and a few people standing still, staring at the horizon, not knowing that the ocean had not gone away. It was only stepping back to gather force. Since 2004, warning systems have been strengthened and public awareness has grown. But the greatest lesson is simple. If you are near the coast and you feel a strong earthquake, or if the sea suddenly pulls back in a strange and unnatural way, that is not the moment to stop and watch. That is the moment to run to higher ground. Do not wait. Do not film it. Do not gather your belongings. Do not stand there in curiosity. Run. Because sometimes, the only thing standing between human life and catastrophe is the ability to recognize a warning that lasts only seconds. No system can bring back the children who were lost. No map can restore the families that were broken. No machine can return the laughter the sea carried away. But humanity can still do one thing. Remember. Remember, so we can teach. Remember, so we can warn. Remember, so that next time, more people will turn and run instead of standing still. Because when we speak of the 2004 Indian Ocean Tsunami, we are not speaking only of a geological event. We are speaking of the morning the ocean became a graveyard. The morning hundreds of thousands of people were given no second chance. The morning humanity learned, through tears, that sometimes the quietest moment in nature is the moment closest to death.